As we see with Star Wars, it only takes driving away one generation of fans to break an institution that, up till that point, had been passed from generation to generation. Now the Wizard of Oz may be next in the line to fall. Let's see how. This video is sponsored by Black Forest Supplements. Wicked for Good is one of the biggest hits of the year, in a year where Hollywood is in a self-imposed state of crisis, and as a direct result, desperate for hits, current and future. As such, a producer behind the movie therefore stated that production company Universal feels a responsibility to keep the franchise going and making more sequels, which they cannot be faulted for, as they have fiduciary responsibilities to their shareholders, and continuing the Wicked franchise is the closest thing they have to a sure thing right now. But them doing that would be detrimental to the legacy of the original, as they will by necessity have to do to The Wizard of Oz what J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman already did to Star Trek, and we're about to explore just why that is. But before we get into that, let's take a moment to talk about NMN, which is so efficient it's de facto banned in the EU, which my country luckily isn't part of, because it works that well. A Harvard clinical trial showed that 1000 milligrams of NMN a day can double NAD+ levels and even reduce fat, cholesterol, and blood pressure. That's not some TikTok hype. Here's Professor David Sinclair from Harvard Medical School explaining it.
Of the people that I know that look freakishly and unusually young for their age, that I've met in, say, the last 36 months, I cannot get over how many of them have told me that I'm on NAD and I'm on metformin. And I'm talking about everywhere from a gym to a golf course to a business meeting. I'm talking about visually, shockingly looking young people. Mainly people in their 50s that look like they could be in their 30s or early 40s to me. So when you say NAD, do you believe in the IV therapy? Do you believe in the stuff you can inject with subcutaneously? Or are you speaking specifically about this precursor that you were referencing?
Well, what I believe doesn't so much matter, but the scientific evidence points to taking a supplement every day, a gram of NMN, which is this precursor, stands for nicotinamide mononucleotide, for the aficionados. Just swallowing one of those, or 1,000 milligrams, is enough to double your NAD.
One capsule a day can double your NAD, meaning your cells act young again. The tech billionaires are all taking it, and they're not aging like the rest of us. Big Pharma doesn't want you to get this for 70-some bucks, not when they can repackage it themselves and push it for 3,000. Black Forest NMN is the real deal, made in the US of A at their GMP-certified, FDA-regulated facility. And while there are tons of NAD boosters out there, NMN is the only one the FDA tried to turn into a drug. Why? Because it works that well. Luckily, a judge blocked the ban, so it's still legal, for now. If Big Pharma ever patents it, game over, just like in the EU. So you might want to stock up while you can, and right now, for Black Friday, Black Forest just launched their biggest deal of the year. Buy one, get one free across the entire store. And get a free bottle of NMN added to every single order on top of the BOGO. So no matter what you buy, you get your free BOGO bottle, and you also get one extra free NMN automatically added to your order. This ends in 48 hours though, and once it's gone for good, so don't miss out. Link is in the description and pinned comment. With that, let's begin with exploring how the original Wizard of Oz may fall, with a brief recap of how it begun. Artist and entrepreneur L. Frank Baum wrote the original wonderful Wizard of Oz way back in the year 1900. Predating both J.R.R. Tolkien and Robert E. Howard, Baum created a fully realized fictional world with Oz, a world he embellished over a total of 14 books and several short stories up until his death in 1919. Many saw the potential here early on. It was adapted into a musical that premiered in Chicago in 1902 before moving to Broadway in 1903. And L. Frank Baum himself created a Hollywood studio aimed at bringing these stories to life, though most of the movies that came out of it are, in part or in whole, lost to time. The oldest surviving complete movie adaptation of the original story is the 1925 feature film. However, it took substantial liberties with the source material, for which it was heavily criticized at the time, and which contributed to the movie, for all intents and purposes, flopping. The story was next subject of a 1932 animated short story by Ted Eschbau Studios, which many consider to be the first animated short made in color, though it's hard to be sure of that, as once how to do that was figured out, several animated shorts were developed in color at the same time, independently of each other. What changed everything, though, was the 1939 feature film, which would go on to be a classic. "1939 saw the release of the classic feature film starring Judy Garland, which was the most expensive feature film production company MGM had made up till that point, costing $2.7 million $1939 to make. It was as ambitious for 1939 as The Matrix had been in 1999, and James Cameron's 3D Avatar was in 2009. And despite being a rousing hit upon release, it was so expensive that it did not see a profit until later re-releases. With those later re-releases though, and its subsequent life on TV and in home media, it became the most seen movie of all time, according to the US Library of Congress. On top of that, it's one of the very few films on UNESCO's Memory of the World International Register, and it's a regular staple on all lists of the greatest movie ever made that different trade magazines publish ever so often. Becoming event family viewing, the movie was passed down from generation to generation for nigh on a century now, and the many little people in it lived out their lives attending conventions, fan events, and reprising their roles for various Macy's parades and similar. If anything negative can be said about that movie, it is that perhaps it became too successful, and in a manner which sets the stage for Wicked taking over its position going forward. The problem with the 1939 feature film, where the legacy of the expanded Oz universe is concerned, is that the producers behind the movie essentially made the Land of Oz one big dream sequence. According to the internal logic of the movie, that entire world ceased to exist the moment Dorothy woke up, thereby closing the door on not just any further sequels, but any interest many of those watching the movie for the first time may have had in reading the books. Consider, watchers of any one adaptation of Harry Potter, Narnia, The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, or anything else may be tempted to take a deep dive into the original books to revisit the world they just got introduced to, but in The Wizard of Oz, the movie closed that circle, and I submit that is a big part of the reason why the Oz books has such minute presence in popular culture relative to the popularity of the movie. As I said before, with the 14 Oz books, as well as the short stories and other books which don't take place in the Land of Oz, but nonetheless take place in that overall universe, L. Frank Baum created a fully realized fictional fantasy universe before not just Tolkien, but before Robert E. Howard and even Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yet comparatively few have read those books. The 14 original Oz books have sold between 50 to 70 million copies since their original publication, but the bulk of those sales are of the first one, not the other 13. And that figure also represents accumulated sales over more than a century. None of them have been bestsellers in the lifespan of anyone alive today. Point is, today L. Frank Baum's original literary Oz universe has virtually no presence in popular culture and a minuscule fanbase. The 1939 movie all but completely usurped any position the original literary universe ever may have had in pop culture, and since that is just one movie and not a larger universe, its position too can easily be usurped, and Wicked just might do that. The two Wicked movies, Wicked and Wicked for Good, are not official Oz stories, nor are they prequels to the Wizard of Oz movie, even though the producers have gone out of their way to sell the audience on the idea that they are. There already is an official prequel in the guise of Oz the Great and Powerful, and a sequel in the guise of Return to Oz, and that is even based on two of Baum's original books. Both this prequel and sequel were made under official license, and both suffer from the problem that the events of the 1939 movie that they respectively set up and follow are but a dream, yet these remain the official prequel and sequel. Wicked, however, is not connected to either the original books nor any of the official movies. Instead, Wicked is based on the musical, which in turn is based on the 1995 book Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West by Gregory Maguire. And that book is not even Oz fan fiction, as it is a subversive satire. And it's a satire of the 1939 movie, mind you, not any of Baum's original work. I mean, think Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, or Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. That is what Wicked is, taking a cultural institution and subverting and perverting it into something it never was, appealing to a very different audience than the original work. But this book, which again satirizes the 1939 movie, I cannot stress that enough, was turned into a musical, and after the musical was a hit, Hollywood turned that musical into 2 movies. So we are by now very far removed from the 1939 movie and even further from Baum's original literary Land of Oz. Yet it is this derivative of derivative of derivative work which will decide the future legacy of Baum's original work. As I said in the beginning, hits are so rare for Hollywood these days that when there is one, they're going to milk it. Cue Universal's chief marketing officer, Michael Moses, divulging some key information to Vulture magazine. Vulture, of course, hid it behind the paywall, but that Park Place brought us the relevant section, so it's all good. Their write-up reads, in his interview with Vulture, Moses made one of the most revealing comments a studio executive can make in today's IP-driven landscape. Because of Wicked's success, but also the fanship, we have almost a responsibility to figure out how we can continue in this universe. Have we figured it out yet? No, but there are things underway. The author translated that as meaning they don't have a plan, but they absolutely have an intention. A Wicked sequel is coming. They just don't know what shape it'll take. I can tell you what shape it won't take though, and that is anything that actually honors the 1939 movie or any other adaptation of any of L. Frank Baum's original work. They just made a boatload of money on something that perverts all of that, so that is what they now are going to continue to do, all while selling the audience on the idea that this is the real Oz now. And for a generation of young girls, a big part of the new target audience, this will indeed be the real Oz. Not that old-timey movie that their grandparents used to like. No, for the modern audience, Wicked will usurp the role the 1939 classic once had, and when it gets further sequels, they will only cement Wicked as the new Oz, even if it is a mean-spirited satire. In other words, the future of the Oz franchise is similar to what Star Trek already has endured for nigh on 20 years, when all new Star Trek was actually made under a separate license that had to be 25% different from the original Star Trek, yet the powers that be didn't want the audience to know that, and did everything in their power to pass off their derivative Star Trek as the real Star Trek. Only difference here is that Universal doesn't have to worry about any 25% difference, since so much of Baum's work is in the public domain now anyway. So, what will they do? Well, wanting more money, following the success of the musical, Gregory Maguire wrote more Wicked books, which again satirized the 1939 movie. But Hollywood isn't bound by that, not even for Wicked sequels. They owe Gregory Maguire, author of Wicked, even less than they do L. Frank Baum, so most likely they're going to go their own direction and eventually practically remake The Wizard of Oz in this universe. No matter what they do though, you can rest assured that they will plaster the name L. Frank Baum all over it, no matter how much the new movie may degrade his original work. I am reminded of what the Weinstein Company did with the latter Hellraiser direct-to-video sequels, especially the rush job rights retainer that was Hellraiser Revelations, which they nonetheless plastered Clive Barker's name all over, which prompted Barker himself to lash out on Twitter, saying at the time, I have nothing to do with the fucking thing. If they claim it's from the mind of Clive Barker, it's a lie. It's not even from my butthole. I have a hunch that if L. Frank Baum were still with us, or even the makers of the 1939 movie, they would have similar sentiments about Wicked, and whatever the future of the franchise will spawn. Yet for the modern audience to come, more likely than not, that will be us. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, and before you go, head down to the link in the description or pinned comment to secure your special Black Friday offer from Black Forest. A store-wide buy one get one free, plus one free NMN added to your order.